From childhood, we are taught that leaders are important figures in organizations. Most often the message, explicit or implicit, is that they decide what we do, how we do it, and most often also how well we do it. But teams are dynamic systems, and every individual can affect how the team evolves and the performance of the team. So basically, any individual can make or break a team. In this episode, we will look into the role of the team member. We will look into culture of teams, what characterizes low and high performing teams, and also what behaviors you as a team member can choose to help your team be high performing.
I think it's a really relevant way of describing teams, that they are dynamic systems. And what we mean by that is that you have multiple powers acting at the same time. In a team, the easiest way to understand it is that every team member is a power or a factor, right? In the dynamics of the team. So they will influence the team and what happens. And then the other thing is that you have what's called non-linear effects, which means that even a small change can actually have a huge influence, and the opposite. You can have a huge change and almost doesn't affect the system at all.
It's like what we call the butterfly effect.
Yes, right? Exactly. That's the famous example. And then you can imagine just a situation where you have in a team, for example, you have a meeting, right? And then it's enough, it could be enough that only one person, one team member is in a bad mood, says the wrong things or is grumpy or something. And that could actually ruin the whole knowledge integration process of that meeting.
Yeah, exactly. I think, to me, what's so interesting about this is that it could actually ruin the knowledge integration for several meetings, or maybe for the whole lifetime of that group.
That's a dynamic system.
Exactly.
And that's because of patterns.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting to see what happens with these patterns over time.
So even though it sounds like this changes all the time, on the other side, we want patterns, or we form patterns. So we start behaving in the same way towards each other. We start expecting the same things from each other and so on. And that's patterns. So you could say that it's like the team creates its own culture, because this is culture.
So I think what you're saying now is really important, that the definition of what culture is actually how individuals in a group behaves.
Yes.
And it's interesting.
Or the patterns in that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting because in my experience, many people view culture as something that is given, and most often very difficult as well. In Sweden we have this saying, det sitter i väggarna. Basically in English it would be something like, it's in the walls, the culture is in the walls. But it's really not like that at all.
No.
Because when you have these patterns, and what we just established is that any individual can change these patterns just by how you choose to behave, that means you can change the culture at all times. So it's not at all in the walls.
No, the culture is people behaving. Right, yes, so we can break patterns at any time, basically. But it's not going to be that easy, and it's probably going to feel awkward, because we're not really programmed to act against the cultures we are within. Instead, it's the opposite. We're very sensitive to this, and we look for what culture and what behavior we are expected to have, right?
Yeah.
And any change may also encounter resistance.
Yeah.
Because people don't want change.
Yeah, exactly. And you mean, in a way you are right about that. Breaking cultural patterns or behaviors will be awkward for people.
Yes.
But it's not difficult to do it. It's not difficult to take on these others' behaviors, because basically every person has at some point in their life been in a team where that was high performing. And at that point you came into that team, you saw what was the norm and culture there, and you started acting like they are doing. So it's not something that is difficult. Everyone has the skill. We have the skill, but this is you could say this is both good and bad, right? Because if you come into a low performing team, chances are quite high that you will copy the same behavior that creates this low performance. So things you may want to look out for is that if you're in a team where things feel, a bit irritated, people don't really seem to listen to each other, and maybe the decisions they are making is rather unclear, but they seem to be, accept that. But there's also these things that you can choose to do if you want to change that team. If you want to make a team be high performing, there are certain behaviors that you as an individual can choose to help the team be more high performing. Yeah, let's look at those. Yeah.
In research, there's been a lot of different studies on what is effective teams, and especially one has tried to identify what is general efficient team behaviors.
Yes. And the first behavior that we would like to dig deeper into today is to continuously develop your understanding of the team's purpose and goals and the situation, basically. And I mean, historically, this has been a lot about the leader's responsibility to clarify the purpose. Yes. But today, when the organizations and the individuals are so specialized, it's not good enough anymore to let the leader do that. If you're going to be self-navigating as an individual in a team, you need to understand the purpose just as good as the leader, and you need to continuously work on developing your own understanding of the purpose and the goals.
Okay, so it doesn't matter, how well you understand the purpose and so, or that's good, but it's not enough. It's also going to be about how you apply this, how you deal with unexpected events and so on. And this skill of applying your understanding, that's what we call being heedful.
Yeah. Basically, that's the most important behavior when we look at high-performing teams. But it's a difficult word, and it doesn't really have a good synonym. But usually when we talk about it, we usually say that it's about being caring, attentive, purposeful.
Yeah, but for what? What would you say you have to be caring and attentive to?
Well, you have to be caring and attentive and purposeful, both towards the team, towards the situation, but also towards yourself. Yes. So that you at any given moment can act upon these three entities and what they need, and time your response to all of these three entities' behavior, or not behaviors, but like what they need.
It's a word I've read somewhere is that it's about bringing yourself or your powers to bear. Yeah. And in order to do that in a good way, you need to keep track of all these things at the same time. What is the task? Where is the team? Where am I? And then you sort of work with all these factors and try to make the right thing.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing we should talk about when it comes to efficient team behavior by team members, and that is to the skill of keeping the mood up in the team.
Yeah, because just like humans, teams can vary in their energy, self-confidence, in their warmth.
Yeah. But the good thing in a team, though, and it's kind of obvious, is that you're not alone, right?
No, exactly.
So here team members can actually help each other keeping sort of the spirit up in the team. And do things like, sometimes we need a laugh, sometimes we need, to work extra hard and so on, and keeping, a lookout for what is needed. And of course, that means that sometimes the team will be relying upon you.
Yeah, but this is not always easy though, because
no, it's not.
When you're in that situation, you have a lot of things working against you. People will be stressed, they will be in a bad mood and everything. But for me, I always feel like it's somewhat rewarding or comforting to know that I have the power in my hands to do something about this. So I always know that I can change the behaviors and the culture in the group.
Yes.
And it's in my powers, and that's quite nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so this aspect of high-performing teams that we've just been discussing, it's really important, but there's something in the wording here that I don't really like. We're using words like warmth and mood and spirit, and it sounds like we're only talking about having a nice time. And having a nice time is important and everything. Sure. But the real kicker here is that this comes down to intelligence, team intelligence, and therefore it comes down to performance, and in the end, business value. What I'm trying to say is that the culture is affecting how people perform.
Yes.
And it's quite heavily underinvested, I'd say. Yeah. We spend a lot of money investing in leadership, for example, but we don't spend at all as much money investing in how people choose to act and how you are supposed to act to be a good team member, for example. And to me, that's fascinating, because we know that this has a direct impact on basically on the bottom line. So it's crucial for businesses, and still we're not really putting our focus there.
So, in this episode, we argue that every team member matters in the creation of the team culture and the level of team play. And the behaviors that matters are, first, to ensure that you have your own understanding of the purpose, the situation, the context, what you're supposed to do, and all those things. The second is being heedful, acting with care and attention and awareness on how you can support the team, the situation, and also yourself. And the third thing is taking responsibility for the mood and the culture of the team. That's what makes a good team player.